When military defeat becomes inevitable, propaganda turns into the last surviving weapon. It's not about tanks or missiles anymore, it's about headlines, hashtags, and news cycles. And in the recent India-Pakistan escalation, this weapon has been wielded with alarming precision, not just by Pakistan, but with the aid of some influential voices in the Western media. This is the story of how Operation Sindoor, a bold Indian strike against terror infrastructure in Pakistan, was drowned under a tide of falsehoods, half-truths, and biased reporting. This is the story the world needs to hear. After suffering heavy losses during India's Operation Sindoor, an air and drone campaign that neutralized key terrorist hubs and degraded Pakistani military infrastructure, Pakistan knew it couldn't compete with facts. So, it turned to fiction. Instead of admitting the devastation, Pakistan claimed a miraculous military feat, the downing of 5 Indian fighter jets, including advanced French-made Rafales, using Chinese J-10C aircraft. A bold claim. But where was the proof? None was presented. No wreckage, no radar logs, no videos, just a declaration, and, not so surprisingly, a global media chorus ready to sing along. On May 13th, Bloomberg published an article titled, "Chinese Weapons Gain Credibility After Pakistan-India Conflict." It repeated Pakistan's unverified claims of shooting down 5 Indian fighter jets, including Rafales, without presenting a shred of credible evidence. Yet, the piece made an observation: the market capitalization of the Chinese jet manufacturer surged by over 55 billion yuan, more than $7.6 billion, after Pakistan's alleged success. Why did Bloomberg push this narrative? The original authors? 2 Chinese nationals, Josh Xiao and Yian Li. No Indian voice, no balance. That is, until backlash erupted on Indian social media. Suddenly, the article was updated, and a new name appeared, Sudhi Ranjan Sen, an Indian journalist. But here's the catch: archived versions of the article show Sen's name wasn't part of the original byline. His sudden inclusion raises some questions. Was this just an attempt to disguise propaganda as journalism? A cosmetic fix to a deeper issue? The New York Times, long known for its ideological slant, was next. In its initial reporting, the NYT legitimized Pakistan's narrative. It quoted John Pike of GlobalSecurity.org, who speculated that Pakistani missiles could have downed Indian jets. Based on what? Nothing but Pakistan's vague claims and the fact that it had those weapons. Meanwhile, the internet was flooded with satellite images clearly showing the damage inflicted by Indian drones and missiles inside Pakistani territory. Eventually, the NYT changed its tune, albeit somewhat. In its May 14th article titled "India and Pakistan Talk Big, but Satellite Imagery Shows Limited Damage," the NYT finally acknowledged that India had struck deep and struck hard. But even this reluctant admission came with the usual hedging, citing anonymous officials and diplomats to support Pakistan's downjet fantasy. Which officials? Which diplomats? No names. No evidence, just shadows behind the curtain. France 24 took it a step further, presenting Pakistan's supposed use of Chinese-made J-10 fighter jets as a win for China. They even called it a victory for China in terms of perception. Translation? Propaganda works if it's repeated enough. The article praised Xi Jinping's modernization of the Chinese military, using the India-Pakistan conflict as a backdrop to promote Chinese defense capabilities. It quoted Chinese and pro-China experts to paint India's defenses as weak, all while ignoring the fact that India had effectively disabled Pakistani radar systems and air defenses using loitering munitions and drone swarms. The result, a one-sided piece that reads more like a CCP press release than independent journalism. Reuters wasn't far behind. On May 7th, they published, 3 fighter jets crashed in India's Jammu and Kashmir, local gov sources say. Local sources? 2 days later, they doubled down. Pakistan's Chinese-made jet brought down 2 Indian fighter aircraft, US officials say. Again, anonymous sources. No photos, no statements from India, just echoes from Pakistan and unverified claims from US officials. Interestingly, the journalist? Idris Ali and Saeed Shah, both Pakistani journalists. No wonder the narrative matched Islamabad's talking points. Now, let's step away from the fog of war and into the light of evidence. India's Operation Sindoor was swift, precise, and deeply effective. John Spencer, a combat veteran and head of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute, called it a decisive victory. In his own words, Operation Sindoor met and exceeded its strategic objectives, destroying terrorist infrastructure, demonstrating military superiority, restoring deterrence, and unveiling a new national security doctrine. This wasn't symbolic. It was strategic force, applied with surgical precision. Spencer further emphasized that India's response marked a turning point: no more warnings, no more restraint. Just action. The April 22 Pahalgam terror attack was answered with overwhelming firepower, without waiting for global sympathy. Walter Ladwig, a South Asia expert at King's College London, told The Washington Post, "These were the most extensive Indian air attacks on Pakistani military infrastructure since the 1971 war." Geospatial analyst William Goodhind added, "High-profile targets were hit in precision strikes aimed at severely degrading Pakistan's offensive and defensive air capabilities." These assessments are backed by high-resolution imagery and geospatial analysis. Not social media chatter. Not hearsay. Not anonymous whispers. Facts. Why was the Western media so biased in its reporting, you might wonder? Well, one very clear objective is the fear of loss of future deals. Pakistan depends heavily on Chinese and American defense equipment, and the fact that American and Chinese equipment failed against India's indigenous missiles and Russia's S-400s would mean huge embarrassment for both China and USA. For example, the Pakistani Air Force, PAF, flies American-made F-16 fighter jets, a platform that is not just a military asset but a multi-billion-dollar symbol of US defense supremacy. If word leaks out that US F-16s were ineffective in a conflict against India, global clients will think twice before investing in what could be perceived as an obsolete or ineffective platform. The United States cannot afford such an outcome. Same goes for China. It cannot afford to lose face that its fighter aircrafts, air defense systems and missiles turned out to be a dud. And hence, the propaganda. But India didn't stay silent. It released hard data, before and after visuals, intercepted comms, and even radar patterns confirming Operation Sindoor's scale and precision. While Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif could only say, "It's all over social media," India spoke in the language of satellite frames and strike geometry. And still, some in the West looked away. India's Operation Sindoor was not just a tactical victory, it was a strategic message. Against terror, against impunity, against manipulation. And yet, that message was distorted by those who should know better. It's time to unmask the biases, to demand accountability, and to remind the world that truth isn't a matter of opinion, it's a matter of proof. If you believe in truth over headlines, and facts over fiction, like this video, share it widely, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage. Let's challenge the narrative, together.